Hi friends! Are you ready to start the next few chapters of Front Desk? When we left off, Mia's mom had been attacked by a bad guy that came into the office and got sent to the hospital. And then the hospital said that they owed a whole lot of money that they couldn't afford. And Mia used her tip jar money in order to pay the remainder of the bill after the doctor had said that they don't need to pay anything. Are you ready? Oh, and Hank went after the guy. So we'll find out what happens with Hank right now. All right, ready? Chapter 42 of Front Desk. The good news was that the punks got arrested. Hank told us. My mom put her hand over her chest and sighed with relief. The bad news is, so did I, Hank muttered. What? I lunged forward. That's terrible. Hank chased the guys who beat up my mom 5 blocks. As he was running, Hank picked up a rock and threw it at them. The rock landed on the guy's head and they got in a huge fight. A cop parked across the street saw what had happened and immediately jumped out of his car and arrested them all. Hank was charged with assault with a deadly weapon and had to spend the night in jail. My mom covered her mouth with her hands. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, my mom said. Where are the other guys? I asked. Oh, they're still in jail, but I took a plea and at least I'm out, he said. My mom reached over and put her hand on top of Hank's. Oh, Hank, my mom said. Hank looked at her. What about you? You okay? He asked. What'd the doctor say? He said I'll be fine. It's just a concussion, my mom told him. What about the bleeding? He asked. It's only on the outside, my mom said, touching her bandage with her hand. Hank nodded, relieved to hear. Good, he said. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta go to my room and pack. What for? I asked. I can't stay here rent-free anymore, he said. I spent the night in jail, remember? I've broken my 30 days. By 1 day, I exclaimed. Still, Hank said, rules are rules. Mr. Yao's not going to know. Hank looked at the floor. When I was in jail, they put 2 and 2 together. They remembered me from the car theft case. So they called up Mr. Yao and told him I was in jail, he said with a sigh. He knows. Hank lifted his eyes to meet mine. Take care of your mom, kiddo, he said. A lump formed in my throat, seeing him standing there empty-handed with no money, no place to live, and nowhere to go. You can't leave, I said. I looked at my parents. Mia's right, my dad said. We've got to do something. Chapter 43. Hank was shocked by our offer. Hide me? Are you sure? Yes, my parents said. We do it all the time for immigrants from China. We just have to be careful. What if we get caught? Hank asked. We won't tell if you won't tell, Mom said. We helped Hank clean his stuff and move into another room. There was no way he could keep staying in room 12. Mr. Yao might go check in there. He had to switch rooms, but with not much stuff. Hank had a lot of junk that he'd accumulated over the years, so whatever he decided wasn't essential, we chucked. We moved his tomato plant to the pool. The rest we moved to my closet. When he was able to get down to his bare essentials, down to 1 small bag, my dad handed him the key to room 5. It'll only be for a little while, Hank said, just until I get back on my feet. He was adamant about finding another job. On that front, he wasn't having a ton of luck, though. The problem wasn't finding an open position. It was that he had to have a reference letter from his old employer. What's a reference letter? I asked him before I left for the night. He didn't seem like he wanted to talk much about it, so he wouldn't say exactly. Just that it was important that he didn't have it. Later that week, I asked Hank if there was anything that I could do to help him find a job, but again, he batted me away. Look, if it was simple, I would have asked you already, but it's not. It's complicated, he said. What's so complicated about it? I asked him. He shook his head. You're just a kid. You wouldn't understand, he said, which hurt a lot. I wanted to say, Hank, no, you don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to hold your pee and not make a sound when you're in the bathroom and the popular girls walk in and start talking about you. I crossed my arms at Hank. Try me, I said. He sighed. Most places won't hire you unless you have a reference letter from your old boss saying how good you were, and I don't have that, he said, frowning. Well, you could get it, I asked. Could you get it? I asked him. He shook his head. No, I already tried. He paused for a second and added, and that's not even the biggest problem. What's the biggest problem? I asked. The biggest problem is that on top of everything else, now I have a criminal conviction. His fight with the guys who beat up my mom meant that he had a record now. No employer wanted to touch him. I can't even hide it, he said. All they have to do is run a criminal record check and boom, there it is. So tell them the truth, I said. Tell them that you were defending my mom. They'll never believe that, he said. Why not? Hank shook his head. Because I'm not like you, Mia. People look at you and see a nice, sweet Chinese girl. What do they see when they see you? I asked. He looked at his feet. A criminal, Hank said. No, I said firmly. Don't say that. Why do you think I took the plea? I know what the verdict would be if I went to trial. People look at me and see guilty. I shook my head furiously. No, no, I kept repeating. Hank got quiet. There are some things, Mia, that no matter how hard you try, you will never fully understand. As Hank looked into my eyes, I realized that there was a reference letter. I realized there were reference letters and Mean Girls. And there were other things on a whole other level of you don't understand. Chapter 44. The police came over 2 days after the robbery to get my mom's statement about her attackers. She was worried about having to testify in court because of her broken English, but the police officers assured her that she didn't need to testify if she didn't want to. Her attackers were ex-convicts who had skipped out on their parole. They were going to stay in jail this time with no parole. My mother was relieved. Word got out about my mother's attack, and the security guard from the Topaz Inn once again came bopping over. Hank and I were both at the front desk this time. I narrowed my eyes. What do you want? I heard about the attack, he said. Terrible, just terrible. Too bad you guys didn't have a security guard like me. I would have pounded his head in. And you would have gotten arrested, Hank pointed out. The security guard gave half a shrug. In my line of work, an arrest is a badge of courage, he said. He jammed his hands into his pockets and pulled out a business card. Here's my number in case you guys ever need to hire a security guard, he said, sliding his card across the desk. I picked it up and I was about to throw it away when Hank said, "Let me see that." He took the card with him back to his room. The next morning, Hank came back to the front office with 4 letters. He handed them to me. "Mail these for me, will you?" he asked. "Sure thing," I said, taking the letters from him. The envelopes were addressed to various malls all over our area. Anaheim Plaza, where my mom and I like to go, the Garden Walk, the festival over in Anaheim Hills, which was supposed to be really nice, and Canyon Plaza. One of the envelopes was not sealed tight. As I flipped it over, the letter fell out. The word security guard caught my eye. I started reading. Dear Anaheim Plaza, my name is Hank Caleb and I would like to apply for a job as a security guard in your mall. I am hardworking and honest. I am also responsible and take my job very seriously. My last job was working at a gas station. I had to do many things like tend to the cash register, keep an eye on the customers. A lot of people try and steal from gas stations. Wash windshields and check fluid levels and air pressure. During my entire time working at the gas station, I was never late once. I take great pride in my work, and I would like the opportunity to be a security guard because I am helping people and keeping them safe. If you hire me, I will not let you down. I would be honored to come in for an interview. Sincerely, Hank Caleb. I thought it was a wonderful letter. As I read it, I wanted to run out the back, find Hank, and give him a big hug. I hoped they gave him an interview and didn't just write back asking for a reference letter. I started thinking some more about this pesky reference letter. If only there was a way I could help him get one. That's when it dawned on me. I got out a piece of paper and started writing. Dear employer, I would like to recommend Hank Caleb to you as a security guard. Hank Caleb has been a security guard at the Calvista Motel from June until now. He is the most responsible, capable, and courageous security guard we have ever had. Recently at the Calvista, we had an unfortunate incident in which some dangerous people tried to steal money from the cash register. One of our managers tried to stop them and was beaten up and had to go to the hospital. Hank immediately ran over after the attackers and chased them 4 blocks. He managed to catch them and he got into a fight with them. Unfortunately, some cops saw Hank getting into a fight with them and ended up arrested. But the point is, Hank went out of his way to protect his managers when most security guards would have stayed back. You will not find a better security guard than Hank. Please find the receipt of the hospital bill stapled as proof of evidence. If you have any questions, please call the Calvista at 555-281-0482. Sincerely, the managers at the Calvista Motel. It took me 2.5 hours and 5 drafts to write the reference letter. I didn't want the letter to sound like it came from a kid, so I borrowed Mrs. T's Dictionary Thesaurus again and tried to make it look as good as Hank's. I substituted simple words for fancier words and checked all the tenses and grammar. Finally, after proofreading 10 times, I copied the letter into 4 clean white sheets of paper. I also rewrote Hank's letters in a different handwriting and changed all the stuff he wrote about working at a gas station and working at the Calvista. As I was forging Hank's signature, I felt a teeny bit bad. Was what I was doing wrong? What if I got caught? Would Hank be mad at me? Part of me wanted to go over and tell Hank what I was doing, ask him if it was okay. But the other part of me worried he would say no, especially given his strict views on reference letters. As I fretted over what to do, I glanced over at my math textbook and thought of my mom. She told me when she was a little girl, she would eavesdrop on her brother's math lessons with her tutor. Her family only had enough money for one math tutor to come to the house, and her parents didn't think it was useful to educate a girl. But my mother, because she loved math so much, refused to give up. She would listen in on her brother's lessons every week. If the tutor assigned homework, she would secretly do the homework. And here's the funny part. She would then sneak into her brother's desk at night and change all her brother's answers to match her own, so that when the tutor came, he'd go over with him what she did wrong. In time, my mother got really good at math. That's probably why she's constantly hounding me to do more math. But what's the point? The point was, sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. And you have to be creative to get what you want. I stuffed the letters into the new envelopes. As I licked them shut, I whispered under my breath, "Please let this work." All right, friends, that's it for today. I will see you next time.